In 1994, on the 30th of November, Tupac was headed into the building on 7th Avenue in Manhattan that houses Quad Recording Studios with his manager Freddie Moore and friend Randy Walker known as Stretch. When Tupac and his crew approached the elevator, they were approached by 3 gunmen who demanded their money and jewelry. Moore and Stretch obeyed the commands, but Tupac began cursing at the gunmen, resulting in him being shot 5 times and robbed of $40,000 worth of jewelry before being dragged into the elevator to safety by Stretch. Many people, including Tupac, have suspected Lil Cease, Diddy and the late Biggie Smalls for the hit and robbery attempt. However, that theory was denied by Cease, Diddy, and Smalls, and no proof of their involvement has ever surfaced. Others have suspected Brooklyn street legends Jock Agnon known as Haitian Jack, James Roseman known as Jimmy Henchman, and Walter Johnson of being involved in orchestrating the shooting. One thing is for sure. After the shooting, the relationship between the East Coast and West Coast hip-hop communities was never the same again. In this video I will examine what prompted Tupac to get shot, what transpired the night he was shot, and who was involved. So sit back and enjoy the ride with me. Tupac Shakur's music career began at Digital Underground. He met Layla Steinberg when he was 17, in the spring of 1989, when she was offering poetry lessons in an Oakland park. Tupac had already been feverishly writing poems and had persuaded Steinberg, who had no prior music industry interest, to become his manager. She ultimately got Tupac in front of music manager Atron Gregory, who got him a job as a roadie and backup dancer for the hip-hop group Digital Underground in 1990. He soon stepped up to the mic, making his recording debut in 1991 on Same Song, which soundtracked the Dan Aykroyd comedy Nothing But Trouble. Tupac also appeared on Digital Underground's album Sons of the P that October. The founder of Digital Underground, Shock G, introduced Tupac to Stretch. Stretch was from Springfield Garden, Queens, New York City, and was a member of the Live Squad rap group founded by him and his younger brother, Chris Walker, also known as Majesty, and DJ Kalo. He and Tupac grew quite close, and they frequently performed and recorded music together. Tupac saw Gregory as the one who could push his career to the next level while working at Digital Underground. So Gregory became Tupac's manager, and he earned the young rapper a contract with Interscope Records. Tupac's debut album as a solo artist, Tupacalypse Now, was released a month after Sons of the P. As Tupac first began to achieve success as a rapper, his mother was unaware of his career until friends told her. His mother became determined to break out of her drug addiction, which she finally did after moving back to New York City in 1991. Tupac and his mother later reconciled. Tupac's fame increased when he got his first movie role at Juice. Tupacalypse Now was only 2 months old when Juice marched into cinemas amid fears that its graphic content could incite violence. As is often the case with art that touches a nerve with those who don't like tough questions being asked, these concerns were largely unfounded. Instead, Juice became one of the defining films in hip-hop cinema. By 1993, with 1 debut album and 1 movie to his resume, Tupac was a rapper to be recognized, while he was at Manhattan in early November, 1993. He met Haitian Jack, a notorious drug dealer. The two were introduced by an associate of Jack at a party at the Octagon nightclub. Jack was having a little party in there. Tupac was asking who was like, "Who is that guy?" because he saw everybody sitting around Jack with a lot of champagne, a lot of women. From that night, Tupac and Jack started a friendship. They hung out at Scores and watched Riddick Bowe take on Evander Holyfield. They watched the fight in the VIP room of Scores. This was around the time Tupac was busy filming Above the Rim, and meeting his rapper friend from Brooklyn, Biggie Smalls, that warned him about Haitian Jack. Jack is from Haiti. His family emigrated to the Brooklyn, New York neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant following President Duvalier's overthrow in 1986 when he was a teenager. He rapidly began selling drugs and rose to become Brooklyn's most deadly drug dealer. Through Jack, Tupac also met another notorious drug dealer known as Jimmy Henchman. He is from Harlem, New York and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, New York. His parents migrated from Haiti in the 1960s. They divorced when he was young, leaving his mother to raise 5 children alone. Henchman and several friends founded the music conference, How Can I Be Down, in 1992, but him as well was heavy in the streets. Tupac and Jack had a symbiotic connection in which Jack provided marijuana, women, and protection while Tupac diligently observed Jack in order to prepare for his future role as a New York mobster in Above the Rim. Tupac didn't have access to as many popular nightclubs as Jack despite having featured in 2 feature films and having hit songs on significant radio rotation. Jack is also said to have purchased Tupac his first Rolex watch. On November 14, 1993, Jack accompanied Tupac to the now-defunct, upscale Manhattan nightclub Nell's. An associate of Jack introduced Tupac to 19-year-old Ayanna Jackson, who performed oral sex on the actor on the dance floor within half an hour following the introduction. Tupac's life is about to take a turn for the worst at this time. Tupac then invited Jackson to his suite at Manhattan's opulent Le Parker Meridian Hotel. 4 days later, Jackson returned to Tupac's suite, where she found Tupac, Jack, Tupac's road manager, Charles "Man" Fuller, and another man. Jackson later accused Tupac, Jack, and the others of gang rape. 4 days later, Tupac, Fuller, and Jack were arrested and charged with 3 charges of first-degree sexual abuse, sodomy, and illegal possession of a handgun. Jack's attorney had his case separated from Tupac's, and reportedly, Tupac began to distance himself, suspicious of Jack's motives. In November of 1994, while clubbing with friend and fellow actor Mickey Rourke, Tupac voiced his concerns. He told Rourke's friend, Daily News reporter A.J. Benza, that heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson had called him from prison to warn him about Jack. Benza subsequently reported that Tupac also believed that Jack had set him up. Tupac explained to media reporters why he was the only defendant in court after separating himself from Jack. Jack and his colleagues, such as Jimmy Henchman, were not pleased with Tupac saying that because they feared Tupac would reveal their street activities, so they had to do something to keep his mouth shut. On November 30, 1994, something happens to Tupac that sparks a rap war between the West Coast and the East Coast. On the 30th of November, 1994, Tupac had been invited to record with Ron G., a New York DJ, earlier in the evening. Tupac had volunteered to do the recording for free as a favor to the young rapper. He typically charged other rappers a fee to record on their albums. After finishing the taping session, Tupac was paged by a rapper named Booker, who asked him to tape a song with Little Sean, an East Coast rapper. Tupac told him he'd do it that day, for $7,000. Booker agreed and told Tupac it was to take place at Quad Studios, at 723 7th Avenue between 48th and 49th Streets in Times Square. While heading out to the studio, Tupac got a second call from Booker asking why he was taking so long. Then came a third call telling Tupac they didn't have the money to pay him. Tupac told Booker he wouldn't record unless he was paid, and hung up. At 12:16 a.m., Tupac, along with his manager Freddie Moore, his common-law brother-in-law Zayd Turner, and Big Stretch arrived at Quad Studios. They left their car in a parking garage at 148 West 48th Street. Then they walked the short distance, around the Comer, to the studio on 7th Avenue. 9 minutes later, Tupac and his group arrived in front of the studio, standing on a small terrace overlooking 48th Street, for a smoke break, where a couple of teenage members of Junior Mafia, a group Biggie Smalls was sponsoring. They hollered down to Tupac to say hello, then went back inside to tell everyone that Tupac had arrived. Little Caesar had yelled down to Tupac's crew from the top of the recording studio, so Tupac knew Biggie was there and felt safe. Upstairs, it was a party atmosphere. It was a large studio and a lot of people were there that night. Word had spread that Tupac would be recording there. People were excited in anticipation of the popular rapper's arrival. Also there to record, but on a different floor from where Tupac was scheduled to record, were Biggie Smalls and Puffy Combs. They were working on Biggie's "Warning" video. At the time, Quad had recording studios and equipment on 5 different floors. Back on the street, on 7th Avenue, as Tupac and the others approached the entrance to Quad Studios, they could see 2 black men, near the elevator, wearing army fatigues, recognized by Tupac as gang garb worn mostly in the Brooklyn area, so he thought these might be Biggie's security. A third man, also black, was in the lobby, pretending to read a newspaper. Tupac and his group didn't think twice about the men. Tupac pressed the intercom button. The 4 were buzzed in. As they walked toward the elevator, Tupac was ambushed by the 3 men, including the man who had been standing just outside the lobby. 2 of the 3 men pulled identical handguns. They went straight for Tupac, ordering him to the floor and demanding he give up all his jewelry and money. When Tupac went for his own gun stashed in his waistband, they shot him. A round hit him in the groin area and passed through his thigh. That bullet cost him a testicle. Then the gunmen began beating him. They ripped his jewelry off him, then shot him again, hitting him in the chest. Tupac was shot 5 times, twice in the head, twice in the groin area, and once in his left hand. Freddie was shot once in his abdomen. None of the wounds were life-threatening. The men also snatched jewelry from Freddie Moore as they continued holding guns on the others. The robbers nabbed $5,000 worth of Moore's jewelry, as well as Tupac's $30,000 diamond ring and $10,000 in gold chains, but they left Tupac's diamond-encrusted gold Rolex, resulting in them taking around $40,000 worth of jewelry. Freddie Moore gave chase to the robbers, collapsing in front of a strip club next door, due to his shot wound. During this time Tupac was dragged into the elevator and taken upstairs to the 8th floor studio to administer first aid. This floor is where there were several well-known individuals including Bad Boy Records' Biggie Smalls and Sean "Puffy" Combs. Tupac would later describe the scene of when he came out of the elevator as very strange. He said that nobody even got up to help him but only stared at him as if they were surprised he was alive. Tupac said that the only person showing any emotion was little Sean, who was crying. Because of this, Tupac believed Biggie and Puffy knew about the arranged shooting and either didn't let him know or set it up themselves. Tupac reportedly had someone roll him a joint as he made a call to either his girlfriend or his mother, and then he called 911. When the cops showed up, Tupac again saw some familiar faces. 2 of the first 4 police officers on the scene were William Kelly and Joseph Kelly, and, seconds later, Officer Craig McKernan arrived. McKernan had supervised the 2 Kellys in Tupac's arrest at the Parker Meridian and had just testified at the rape trial. "Hi, Officer McKernan," Pac sputtered, lying naked in a pool of his own blood. "Hey Tupac, you hang in there," McKernan responded, as an EMS team secured a brace around Tupac's neck and strapped him to a board. The stretcher didn't fit into the elevator, so he had to be propped upright. McKernan helped carry him out past a waiting photographer. "I can't believe you're taking my picture on a stretcher," Tupac groaned, flipping the middle finger at them. Tupac was rushed to Bellevue Hospital. Tupac continued to bleed heavily all day, so at 1:30 p.m., his doctor and a 12-doctor team operated on the damaged blood vessel high in his right leg. At 4 p.m., he was out of surgery. At 6:45 p.m., against the numerous complaints of his doctors, he checked himself out of the hospital. His doctor said, "I haven't seen anybody in my 25-year professional career leave the hospital like this." Tupac's mother Afeni, who had flown up from Atlanta, wheeled the heavily bandaged Tupac out the back door, fighting through a crowd of reporters. The next day, Tupac made a surprise appearance in the Manhattan courtroom where his fate was being decided. He was wheeled in by Nation of Islam bodyguards, his charmed Rolex that the robbers didn't take on his right wrist, his left wrist wrapped in gauze, and his bandaged head and leg covered by a wool-knit Yankees hat and a black Nike warm-up suit.
Just keep it tight. How are you this morning? Whoa. No problem.
Tupac and Stretch were still friends until Tupac was sent to jail on February 14, 1995, but their friendship quickly deteriorated after Tupac learned that Stretch was still doing shows with Biggie Smalls after he had accused him of being involved with the New York shooting. Tupac felt like Stretch had sided with Bad Boy Records while he was locked up. In a Vibe interview, Tupac went on to insinuate that Stretch never tried to help him during the shooting, which Stretch responded to in another Vibe interview. You can check it out online. Tupac sent a letter from jail, and in the footer are the names of all people he considered his enemies struck out. Stretch's name is last. Tupac suggested in a prison interview later published in Vibe magazine that Stretch's failure to fight the gunman who approached them in the lobby of the building that housed the Quad recording studios was suspicious. According to the information I have gathered, Tupac and his entourage were ambushed by armed men, Dexter Isaac, and Walter Johnson aka King Tut. King Tut grew up in Cypress Hills, a section of East New York, which itself is a neighborhood in the eastern section of Brooklyn, New York. Despite being raised as a Jehovah's Witness, he began a long criminal career in Brooklyn at the age of 16. It was during this time that Johnson acquired the nickname King Tut. At some point, he helped to form a robbery ring, dubbed the Black Mafia, comprised of Brooklyn youth. The gang, which also included Haitian Jack, specifically targeted drug dealers. Dexter Isaac is from Trinidad and Tobago, a country in the Caribbean. He then moved to America in 1975, grew up in the Flat Van Derveer projects and had to adapt to the American way of life. He grew up being the victim on the streets, trying to survive, so he did what he had to do to make it on the streets. He had to learn to be aggressive to be respected on the streets. He began robbing and stealing until he met with Jimmy Henchman in the late 80s. On the day Tupac was shot, Jimmy Henchman paid $2,500 to allegedly get Tupac robbed. The intention was not to shoot but rob him. He told Isaac can keep all the jewelry they took, except for one ring, which he wanted for himself. It was the biggest of the 2 diamond rings that they took. Jimmy Henchman wanted to put the stone in a new setting for his girlfriend at the time. Isaac Dexter later confirmed this back in a statement in 2011. He also revealed that Big Stretch was the person who helped him set up the iconic rapper for a robbery. He said Jimmy Henchman promised Stretch a half a brick, as compensation for pulling off the job. Exactly a year later, Stretch was murdered November 30th in 1995, as some people believe wasn't tied to Tupac. Our only issue with this information surfacing is what motive would Stretch actually have for setting up his boy for a few thousands. Beforehand, him and Tupac had a gold-selling album with Thug Life, Volume 1, as well as Strictly for My. So, Stretch had no financial disagreements with his former brother, and the whole setup just doesn't add up for what he was being offered, unless he was threatened to give up Tupac. After having his day one right-hand guy turn on him, this led to Tupac having a disdain for certain people in New York. Napoleon of the Outlaws revealed how Tupac told him that Big Stretch didn't like to carry guns, due to the New York weapon laws. So, during the day of the incident, Tupac told Napoleon that Stretch was asking for his gun, and knew something was wrong before the shooting went down. Jimmy Henchman also delivered a message to Tupac via Stretch, saying, Jimmy Henchman said if you don't have your money right, you don't want to go to war. Tupac will later respond to this on Against All Odds off his Machiavelli album, which was released shortly after his death, saying, I just remember what you told me. You said don't go to war unless I got my money right. I got my money right now I want war. There is no proof of Haitian Jack's involvement in the Quad Studio shooting, and he continues to deny it to this day. Jack was incarcerated in 2004 after shooting a man following an altercation at a nightclub on Los Angeles' trendy Melrose Avenue. He was deported to Haiti in 2007. On October 24, 1996, King Tut was arraigned in Brooklyn Criminal Court for 3 armed robberies spanning the previous 18 months. He was on parole for another conviction at the time of his arrest. The robbery charges were dismissed, and as Tut left the courtroom, he was arrested by U.S. Marshals and NYPD Major Case Squad detectives. State prosecutors dropped the charges against Tut so that he could be tried under federal statutes. Tut was eventually convicted and became the first New York City resident to be sentenced according to the 1994 federal 3 strikes law. He was given a life term without parole. In the late 90s, Dexter Isaac was charged with a life sentence. He is currently serving life in prison for murder, robbery and other offenses. In June 2010, Jimmy Henchman was arrested on charges of cocaine trafficking, money laundering, and witness tampering. He went on trial in May 2012. In June 2012, Henchman was charged with 4 crimes in connection with the death of G-Unit affiliate Lowell Fletcher, known as Lodi Mac, including murder for hire and conspiracy to commit murder. Henchman is alleged to have arranged a murder as payback for the alleged assault on his son by Tony Yale. Henchman came before a jury again in December 2014, and on December 11 the jury found him guilty on all charges for the murder of Lodi Mac Fletcher. On March 23, 2015, Rosemond was sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years. That is all for this video. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more upcoming videos.